For almost 2,000 years, in prayer and ritual, in stories and teachings, we Jews have felt ourselves living in exile, yearning to return to our ancestral home. Every morning in our prayers, we read these words: "Gather us from the four corners of the earth and lead us upright to our land." Let our eyes behold your loving return to Zion. Our three pilgrimage festivals, Passover, Shavuot, and Sukkot, which will begin this Wednesday evening, are linked to the land of Israel, its sowing and its harvests, its seasons and cycles of aridity and rain. And on Yom Kippur, through our prayers on this most holy day, we reenact the ancient rituals of atonement and forgiveness undertaken by our ancestors in the city of Jerusalem, not some mythical place, but a real city from which we were banished 2,000 years ago and to which we were only allowed to return in the last 60 years. Im eshkachecha, Yerushalayim tishkach yamini. If I forget you, O Jerusalem, let my right hand wither. Let my tongue stick to my palate if I cease to think of you. If I do not keep Jerusalem in memory, even at my happiest hour. To remember Jerusalem, to be in solidarity with our fellow Jews in Israel, and to seek their welfare and the welfare of the Jewish state is a basic Jewish religious duty. Temple Sinai is committed to this obligation of our people, to Israel and to Zionism, and we will remain so. That this needs to be said is a sign of just how confused we have become in recent years, how we have forgotten the meaning of Zionism and forgotten our place within the larger Jewish family. As the author Yuval Noah Harari observed recently, Zionism basically says three things that should be uncontroversial. It says that the Jews are a nation, not just isolated individuals. The second thing Zionism says is that, like all other peoples, the Jewish people has a right to self-determination, like the Palestinians, like the Turks, like the Poles. And the third thing it says is that the Jews have a deep historical, cultural, spiritual connection to the land between the Jordan River and the Mediterranean, which is a historical fact. What the political conclusion is from these three facts, that's up for grabs. As Harari makes clear, Zionism is Jewish national liberation. It is the affirmation of the rights of Jews, like all peoples, to govern themselves in their ancestral homeland. Zionism does not prescribe solutions to political, military, or ethical questions, such as how to prosecute the war in Gaza, or who should be elected Israeli prime minister, or how to bring the hostages home, or what to do with the West Bank. These are important matters to be sure, and Israeli society has been and is grappling with all of them, as should we. But none of them has anything to do with Zionism. Once again, Zionism is about the right of Jews, like all other peoples, to self-government in the place they call home. Nothing in Zionism means that Palestinian liberation isn't also important. Jews and Palestinians are both indigenous to the land of Israel. We need to build a future together. It is both short-sighted and destructive when Palestinian activists say, "We don't talk to Zionists because that's normalization." Indeed, normalization is the only way we will solve our problems. We need to talk to each other because neither of us is going away. So how has the term Zionism been so undermined, equated with racism and with colonialism? Because people around the world, and even some Jews, simply do not understand what it means to be a Jew. As Harari noted, many people say, the Israelis are the white Europeans who came to colonize the indigenous Palestinians. But it's a wrong model. It denies the fact that there was a continuous Jewish presence on the land going back 3,000 years. For 2,000 years, Jews were one of the chief victims of European civilization, its racism and violent colonialism, and suddenly now Jews become the Europeans. And what is more than 50% of Israeli Jews are not from Europe. They are descendants of Middle Eastern Jews from Egypt, from Yemen, from Iraq, who were brutally expelled from their ancestral homes after 1948 by Arab governments in revenge for the 1948 war. Why has the term Zionism been so inaccurately and dangerously undermined? Because of anti-Semitism. A prolific number of new states emerged in the 20th century: Hungary, Turkey, Algeria, and of course the State of Israel. And there was displacement in every case. Arabs were displaced from Israel. Jews were displaced from Arab lands. Hindus and Muslims were displaced in India and Pakistan as these new countries were formed and borders were redrawn. Modern political Zionism, the creation of a Jewish nation state, is in fact one of the few things Jews have ever done that's just like everybody else. As our Cooper Bernstein scholar-in-residence Dara Horn has pointed out, the world is obsessively focused on only one of these new nation states. Why doesn't the world call for the dissolution of Austria or Montenegro or Turkey, states formed in the 20th century on the principle of national self-determination and leading to the displacement of other populations? Because it seems that Jews merit an outsized, obsessive scrutiny, and because our right to national self-determination is in question. The Israeli journalist Yossi Klein Halevi recently wrote, "Anti-Zionists insist on a fundamental flaw in Jewish identity that must be corrected as the emission price into progressive equivalent of polite society. We will accept you among us," anti-Zionists tell young Jews on campus, "and you may even hold Shabbat prayers and Passover seders at our tent encampments on one condition: that you expunge Israel from your identity, a commitment that binds the overwhelming majority of the world's Jews." Anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism because anti-Zionists erase Jewish history, erase Jewish solidarity, and erase age-old Jewish national aspirations. To paraphrase the Psalms, they demand that we forget Jerusalem. We Jews have internalized this anti-Semitism ourselves. We often feel a need to deny our national and communal ties. We're just a religion, we say. But becoming less Jewish doesn't end anti-Semitism. And here I disagree profoundly with the founders of Reform Judaism, who believed that if they circumscribed their Judaism, restricted it to the realm of religion only, denied their ties to their brothers and sisters near and far, and gave up the ancient yearning for their homeland, they would be welcomed and embraced by their non-Jewish neighbors. And yet this did not happen. Anti-Semitism caught up with them, as it always has. And in the process, what was lost? Jewish life has always been lived in community. Judaism is not and has never been about private faith and individual practice. We can't be Jewish without each other. Judaism is less a religion and more a family. There are many ways into Judaism: prayer, learning, service to others. We have different interests, different politics, different backgrounds, and yet we are still part of the same family. Do families always get along? Do we always agree with that uncle or this cousin? Of course not. But we are family nonetheless. We are Jews. Horn argues that non-Jewish society tries to dictate to us how Jews can be Jewish, trying to fit us into a box like everyone else. However, we are an ancient people who predates the categories and boxes into which others try to wedge us. We are a joinable tribal group with a shared homeland and culture, not a religion, ethnic group, or race, but a people. In Hebrew, this is one word, am, We are Am Yisrael, the people of Israel. At this harrowing moment, a moment of uncertainty, a moment when most of us have felt more explicit hostility than ever in our lifetimes, it is time to tell the truth about who we are and to repudiate anti-Semitism for the conspiracy theory that it is. It is time to stop trying to be like everyone else, to be who we are, Am Yisrael, the Jewish people. Telling the truth takes courage. As we reflect on this past year, I imagine many of us could think of moments when we could have spoken up but didn't. By keeping silent, we missed the opportunity to stand up for ourselves. We also missed the opportunity to learn who else might stand with us. Last fall, just weeks after October 7th, my nephew's elementary school in Virginia held its annual International Night. Families from the school set up tables showcasing the food and cultural traditions from countries around the world. 7 families had tables about Palestine, complete with maps of all the land from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean, without any reference to Israel. There was one table for Israel, organized by my sister Rachel and my nephew Ari. The exhibits were arranged geographically, so Rachel and Ari were surrounded by all of the Arab countries in the Middle East, in addition to the 7 Palestinian tables. As they handed out falafel and shared photos from our recent family Israel trip, other school children ran by with stickers emblazoned with the words, "End the genocide in Gaza." People hesitated to stop by, and my sister was worried about how Ari might be treated that night and thereafter. Despite her nerves, she stood proudly and alone. Toward the end of the evening, a woman approached. Leaning over the display, she whispered to Rachel, "My maiden name is Cohen. Thank you for being here." And then she quickly walked away. Why the whisper? We are too afraid to be who we are, to stand with and for each other, to acknowledge that we have a culture, a cuisine, art, politics, and a land of our own where 7 million of our cousins make a life for themselves. We American Jews have spent so much time promoting the American dream. We wrote so many of the country's great songs and stories. We defend the Constitution. How many of you are lawyers? Our congregation is full of elected officials and government employees and community volunteers. We believe in American democracy and are active participants in civic life. And yet, despite all this, we have never been able to fully be who we are. We've changed our Jewish-sounding names. We prioritize our kids' soccer and lacrosse over Jewish holidays and Hebrew school. We are wary of being different or letting down the team. In the end, we are letting down ourselves. We are Jews, inheritors, heirs of a 3,000-year-old wisdom tradition that speaks to us with urgency and clarity even today. We are people who understands the communal obligation and responsibility for others. We thrive on learning, debate, and storytelling, and our cultural traditions from books to music to food are as rich and varied as we are. Our Torah offers guidance for building a society and a life based on righteousness and ethics, and our Torah offers guidance even when we don't live up to it. That's why we have Yom Kippur, so that every year we can recommit ourselves to living up to the best that is in us. And as we do, like every generation before us, we turn our bodies toward Jerusalem, knowing that no matter how at home we are here, our hearts, as the poet Yehuda Halevi wrote, are in the East. In just a few hours, we will conclude Yom Kippur's final service, Ne'ilah, with the ritual of Havdalah. Just as we do when we mark the transition from Shabbat to the new week, we will mark the transition to this new year with the words from the book of Esther. La Yehudim hayata ora v'simcha v'sason v'ikar. For the Jews there was light and joy, happiness and honor. As we sing these words, we know that for our ancestors living in Persia, outside the land of Israel, this sense of safety and well-being was hard-won. Esther didn't want to go to King Ahasuerus and tell him of Haman's wicked plot. She was afraid to reveal that she was a Jew. But her uncle Mordecai convinced her, saying, "Perhaps you were made queen for just this moment." And so she swallowed her fear, accepted the risk, and approached the king. And when she did, when she bravely declared, "I am a Jew and someone is trying to kill me and my people," she found out that the king was on her side. She changed the course of our people's history. This year, more than ever, it's time to claim the mantle of our Judaism and our Zionism. Now is the time to stand up against anti-Semitism in all its forms, to affirm our culture, our family, our land, and to spurn those who wish to define us in ways that only serve their ends. We are made for this. It's our Queen Esther moment.